So let's go ahead and get started. So aloha, everyone. My name is Erin Thompson, and I'm a professor and the coordinator for the Innovation Center for Teaching and Learning at Lieber Community College. And I just want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us for today's session, Reflections on Electronic Dossiers. And we purposely titled it Reflections because it's not like a formal workshop. It really is like a talk story session. From some of our faculty who have recently gone through the electronic dossier submittal process, and they're just going to be sharing their stories with us. In alphabetical order, for our presenters today, Dr. Michael Caudry. Give a wave, Michael, and he is the one with a fancy hat on. He's our associate professor in social sciences teacher education. We also have Brent Hirata, full professor. Congratulations, Brent.
Thank you.
Services in our Educational Media Center. And we have Tina Lee. She is an associate professor, recent associate professor in accounting, right, Tina? Is it accounting? Very good. And then last but definitely not least, we have Susan Waldman, another associate professor, right? A recent associate professor in our language arts English discipline. So just want to welcome our panelists today for taking the time to share their stories. And you folks may have questions that will come up throughout the session. If you do, by all means, throw them in the chat. You can private message on chat. Or just throw it out there for everyone to see, and we'll address questions at the end of our session today, okay? So without further ado, I think it's most important that we hear from our panelists and have them share. Did you folks have any particular order? If not, we can go alpha.
No, that's fine with me.
All right, so let's go alphabetically, and with that, we'll start with our man with the wonderful hat, Michael Caudry.
Reverse alphabetical?
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. I will just throw out this caveat. Myself and Junie, who's in here, were part of the very first year of the electronic portfolio. And so we did have, at that time, we had an electronic portfolio service. And Sandra was responsible, I believe, at that time, for training us and how to use that service. We no longer use that service anymore, but I think none of my comments really address any of the specifics of what service. So I'll just share a little bit about what I think my pros are, and then just what I think you would need to do if you were considering doing it, and then I'll just leave it at that. It's pretty short. But I am available and happy to respond to email or telephone if you guys have any more follow-up questions and you're really trying to consider. I am going to go up for range 5 this year, and I will 100% be doing it electronically. So, and the reasons why, I think it definitely saves time. It is a much faster process, in my opinion. And for a procrastinator, that's always a benefit. I 100% think it saves money, and with that, it saves the environment without needing to purchase all the binders and page yadas, and I don't even know how to use proper pagination and sort of indexing of files. So I'm very much happier to do it electronically. I found that my formatting of my document was much more consistent throughout, as opposed to manually doing it. I think my binders from my tenure document, I think I had 3 binders, and they were very, very thick, as some of you probably have experienced. So I think there's more room for error in there. I found that in the electronic process that I just found I was just much more consistent with my formatting. I didn't have any of the last minute sort of page numbering issues that a lot of people experience. Formatting itself was just not external to the process. It was just sort of something that you did as you went along, at least in my experience with the electronic one. I found that it was much easier to organize my work. I didn't have to sift through a lot of papers. You know, you do have to do some locating of materials, but I find that once you sift through and organize, then it's just a matter oftentimes of linking documents as opposed to re-going through a whole pile of papers. I feel like it's for the reviewers, it's easier to read. You know, there's no need to travel in some cases, though I think, again, this is beyond my pay grade. But it's also electronically transferred. So I think it's a little bit easier. And I've heard feedback from readers. I have not read an electronic one, but I've heard feedback that a little bit easier. I think it's easier as a reader to follow the evidence trail that you're trying to provide, rather than having to read and reference and read and reference. I think it's a little bit smoother to have those embedded links within an electronic document. I think it's easier on the writer to provide a ton of evidence. I think linking to documents increases the amount of evidence that you can provide. And again, you don't have to have that huge binder. I think it is easier to develop a template for future use. Moving from document to document, obviously, doing something in the mid 2000s and then trying to locate that in electronic fashion again is sometimes a pain in the butt. So having it all electronically organized in your Google Drive is going to make it easier for you to use that template for the next go round. And then my last thought on the pros was it's easy to share in the sort of development process for feedback and editing. And so I just feel like when things are in that electronic fashion, it's just easy to throw a link over to a critical friend or supervisor or somebody who you might share that information with prior to submitting. So those are my pros. I like lists of 10, as Aaron and Brent well know. So I have 10 things that you'd need to do. I can hold off on that if you want, Aaron, and we can go on to the next person.
Sounds good, Michael. Okay, thank you. All right, so who's up next? Brent, do you want to go ahead?
Okay, sure. Yeah. Pretty much what Michael said, man. I was looking at my list of my notes, and I mean, I guess I'll go through my list too, because the more you hear about it as an attendee, maybe you'll realize that, what rises to the top, like commonalities. But let me just go through my things. So I submitted mine last year through the online process. And so basically, in my case, it was a Google Doc. But I felt that having it as a Google Doc, like Michael said, made it easier for my peers. I had a proofreader. So eventually, as I got towards the end, I asked my proofreader to look at it, but I wasn't quite done because, I was still working on parts of it. So sharing it through Google Doc was really a nice way to work with somebody so they could look at parts of it while I was still working on it. In my past experiences, when I had done it in Word, there was a problem, with versions and sharing versions of the file back and forth with edits and comments and incorporating all of that. So by being able to just share a Google Doc, still work on it while also having relevant comments made in it, made that life a little bit easier for me. And then as Michael was saying, I believe that it makes a stronger document doing it online. So what I mean by that is when I made the decision last year when I did mine, this is the first time I was doing it online, but it made a stronger document because it allowed for two main things. One is external linking and the other is internal linking within, it's a Google Doc. So what I mean by that is because you can do external links, you can link to other resources outside of your supporting documents. So I know, there's a caveat to that is you don't want to link to things that are going to eventually be a bad link, but certain things like system documents, you can link to make your document stronger. In the past, when I would do a paper document, I was sort of selective on what I would use for supporting documents because Either you got to download it and print it, or you had it as a print already, but you didn't necessarily go beyond that to get, website references and then that kind of data things, because you were limited in what you wanted to print and put in your supporting binder. But with external links, you can have supporting a little bit more freedom to include supporting things. So one example, in my document was I referenced how what I was doing aligned with the university strategic plan. And so strategic plan, technically that link's not going to disappear. So I felt comfortable linking to it. So it helps me to build a stronger document, because I would write in here, in reference to the university strategic plan, data, 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 and I linked to it. I wasn't going to include that in my supporting documents, but if the reader really questioned what I was writing, it had a link right there. They could zip over to the system website and they could see, that reference. So because you can do these external links, it really opens the door in an online format to including more supporting documents. You could link to institutional review data or other sites with more reporting statistics. You can link to that in your document. You wouldn't necessarily include that in a print list of supporting appendices. You can, obviously, you're still going to have a list of electronic supporting appendices, but this opens the door to new things. You can also link to videos. Another thing in my document, I wrote about initiatives. So I had done some work with the UH system office on 5-week courses. David Lasner had a video talking about the importance of the 5-week courses. I didn't embed the video because, people don't need to see it if they don't want to see it in your dossier, but I did include a link to the video if somebody really questioned the importance of this 5-week initiative as a system initiative. There's a video to David Lasner talking about it. So just, a nice thing to be able to do is that external linking. Internal linking within the document. Previously in my paper documents, sometimes I questioned myself whether I was being repetitive, because I would have themes of what I was doing in my dossier. And sometimes I would question whether I've said something enough to build a point. But with internal linking and anchoring, you can link to that place in your document. So if I was doing something like, according to open educational resources, I could mention that in one sentence, and then I could say for more information, and then I would hyperlink the word OER, and if they questioned that, they could click on it and jump to the section in my dossier where I had a whole paragraph on that subject. So the internal linking, I felt, helped me to write a stronger document again, because I didn't have to, mention things more than once necessarily. I could just link to the full explanations in my document. As Michael said, you save on the cost of materials and printing. You also save a little bit on formatting. I could remember coming down to the wire and printing something out, and my content would get split, on one page and go to the next page, or, you spend some time fixing up the formatting and the page numbering. What was nice about the online is this past go around, they took care of a lot of the eligibility pages that you normally would have, 4 or 5 pages. So you could just start at page 1 for your narrative. So that worked nicely. No more, manually starting the pages on like page 8 or whatever. So that was nice. For a reviewer, it was also nice, I feel, because the document was a little bit more engaging. And by what I mean by that is, as a reviewer, they can, because it's a Google Doc, they could do the Control F and they could search your document for certain words. And they could also engage with content, because instead of, like in the prior paper version, 1 year, I even tried to do QR codes. I should mention that I'm a 11-month academic support, educational technology focused person. So a lot of my stuff, it lives in the online world. So a lot of my samples live in the online world. So my paper version, I would put a URL in there, but I know nobody was gonna type it in manually and click on it to go look at my samples. So 1 year I put a QR code in there so they could scan it with their phone, just hopefully to get them to look at it. But with an online version, you put the links in there, they can click on it, and if they wanted to, they can easily see your samples. So I thought for someone like me, that was nice. Again, for the supporting documents, like Michael said, you can search in your personal drive, you can search in your Google Drive. I found searching for stuff in my email was still helpful, but because you can search in the electronic world and you have much more openness to including things in your supporting docs, I think that was an advantage to building a stronger document by doing it online. And that's all I have for now. I can pass it off to the next person.
Thank you, Brent. Thank you. Tina, you have anything to share?
Well, I think they pretty much exhausted my short list. So if anything, maybe could I just do like a screen share and kind of show what my document looked like, and maybe people can get a sense of visually what that could look like. Okay.
That'd be great.
Uh, no. Okay, so are you guys able to see my screen? Okay. So what I did was, and I just to kind of work off of Brent's comments, again, you really create a much richer document because of the linking. So I'm an instructional faculty, I teach accounting, and I had made, say, web videos for whether it's in your Google Drive and you link it, or YouTube, rather than talking about and describing the video, or again, giving a link, you know, I literally just could link my video straight into my document. So things like that, I think I use Wiley Plus a lot. So rather than, again, talking about or just giving a screenshot of Wiley Plus, I could link them straight to Wiley Plus. Let's see. And what else was I going to say? You can link within your document. So again, rather than going into detail again about something that you already described, then you just link them, oh, see section da-da-da about this. And you just kind of leave it a little bit more general in the section where you're re-referencing. The one, I guess, con, I wouldn't call it a con, but I'm definitely a Microsoft person. I'm used to Microsoft Word. And so when I had to make that adjustment, the one thing I would say don't do is start in Word and then try to import it into Google Docs, because the formatting just does not copy over very well. So you're better off just starting straight in your Google Doc. And at first I'm like, oh, I can't do this, can't do that. But once you kind of accept what Google Docs can and can't do, then you just go with it and it's fine. So even though you're not that comfortable with using Google Docs, which I wasn't necessarily that comfortable with at first, that's pretty much all you're doing. You're using, like, you know, these style headings, and you're just typing plain text and you're linking. And my Google Drive folders, so I had a folder that I created just for the write-ups, and that was my narratives. And then every other section in there, I created folders, say professional development. And then I just threw all my, oh, I think it's in my shared drive. I'm like, where'd it go? No. Let's see. So I just did mine this past academic year. So I believe that the system that they're going to use this time will probably be the same. And if that's the case, then really you're only linking from Google, your Google Drive, the shared Drive folder that the system creates for you. You throw all your Google Docs in there, your documents as well as your support. So again, say that's my professional development support folder, and there's all of my PDFs. So it just becomes that much easier. And if you're thinking, oh my God, I have to scan a million documents, a tip I learned from another faculty in my department is I could use the Xerox machine in our office, and if you insert your flash drive, then it scans it like it's gonna make a copy of it. And so you can double side scan a 50-page document within like 30 seconds. And so it just goes straight to your flash as a PDF, and you just upload it into Google Drive And you don't even have to worry about what to name it or call it, because all you're doing, or all I did, was just link it. And whatever you called it in your Google Doc, when they open it up, then there it is. So you didn't have to worry about like appendice 8, 8.1, 8.2, and the numbering of your documents. You just have it all in a Google folder, and you're just linking. So that was another big time saver in the very end, is just not having to worry about a numbering system for your appendices. That was my number one pro, was that you don't even have to make an appendix. At first I was like, should I make a master list of all the documents? And then when I looked at all the documents I had, I said, no, I think I don't have time for it. So I didn't do it, and I kind of just held my breath and just sent it in. But I did not get a single comment from all layers of the review as far as the organization of it or anything like that. So I don't think it would be a problem if you didn't make a master list. I don't know if anybody else made a master list of their appendix documents, but it wasn't a problem for me. So I think that's pretty much it as far as what I had to share. So yeah, that's it for me.
Thank you so much, Tina. I have a quick question for the other panelists before we go to Susan. Did any of you make a master list or an appendices? Brent, you did.
No, I didn't.
You didn't either. Okay, so you had the links, and that was kind of like your opinion. So Brent, but you created a master list of all your links.
Yes, I did.
I guess,
But,
well, I'll talk to when I,
Oh.
sorry, Brent.
Okay,
no, and then my own, yeah, we can talk about that list later.
okay. All right, thank you. Okay, thank you so much, Susan. Go ahead and.
Okay, I guess, well, it's sort of on that line. I submitted, I guess it was last October. It seems like it takes so long. It's crazy. And I was also not that familiar with Google Docs. We did go to a training initially at KCC, so an in-person training. And I do want to say that the support staff from System was very helpful, very responsive to help, because I really was trying to figure out how to do this. It was for us, again, a Google Doc. I'm in writing, and I was just promoted to associate, yay. So the thing that I found my absolute number one pro, like Tina said, was the whole pagination thing. You don't have to do it. It's just, you don't have to do it. So what I did was I organized all of my different sections into folders: service, course evaluations, professional development, et cetera, into their own into folders. And then within the Google Doc, I guess I did make a master list. I only had a table of contents. I had 2 sections in the template that you use. And they did have a template that has sections for professional development and service and different things. And I decided I wanted to just have one big document. And again, it worked, so I guess it was okay. So I had one document that said, this is how you read my document. And then the rest of it was totally just like it would have been one humongous binder. So there was a table of contents, and because it was all in Drive, every section was linked to the table of contents, and every section linked back to the table of contents. So the reviewer could either read the whole thing straight through or just jump to service, they'll go back to the table of contents, jump to student evaluations, go back to the table of contents. It was so much easier. And also, without the pagination issue, I was able to link my student evals in a number of different ways. So they would go in, or course materials for that matter, they would go in under course materials, and they might go in under, achievement of SLOs. Student evals would be linked by course or by year. You can just, the variety is endless of what you can do, which makes it much more dynamic. So the reader can do whatever they want. And like Brent was saying, external links, so you can link to the LCC mission, you can link to whatever else you've done. And also, I've learned in the past few years, any professional development that I've done, I get a digital badge. I don't always get that letter that you can scan. So you can attach your email very easily. the email that you're getting from Aaron's office or from System or from Quality Matters, like what Tina was showing. So I just thought I was calmer about it because I knew where everything was, because paper to me is just going to get lost. And then what Brent was saying about formatting, you've got something written up and all of a sudden it bleeds onto the next page, and now you have to repaginate, you know, B 8.1 and 8.2 and all that insanity. I'm sorry, it was just crazy. And instead of having 2 or 3 humongous binders, and which the reader then has to go from one binder to the other binder, they're just clicking within the document. It's really faster. It must be really faster for the readers. I have yet to read one myself. But yeah, last year when Tina and Brent and I did it, they said, okay, we'll take 5 people from each campus, and we had to really jump on it immediately. Suzette was the one who sent out the request, and I responded within like a minute, I think. And they only took 5 people, so it was done. So now that they're opening it up to everybody, I would highly encourage everybody to, you know, take a stab at it. And you can certainly reach out to me, and the people at System are very helpful, as I said. I don't know if Sandra is going to be able to be here, but her team was really responsive, and I just would absolutely recommend it. And in Language Arts, we also have a copier that you can scan into. One thing I did want to mention is that the system that they set up for you is a separate shared drive, which goes away. Once you've submitted your dossier, everything that's in that separate shared drive is no longer in your reach. So I thought it was very important to copy everything so that I did have copies left over of all my student evals, all my evidence, and my narrative in my own Google Drive, because the drive that you put it into is no longer available to you at some point once you've submitted it. It's just in the TNP system. Now, I don't know if that's still going to be true, but that's how it was for us. So yeah, that's it.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Susan. And I just want to clarify to the audience that this was not supposed to be like a pro do electronic session.
But it is.
It ended up being, it was really just a call out to figuring out, okay, who submitted and are you willing to be a part of this session, and to be totally honest, pros and cons, just to share so that people can make their own decision for themselves. So I just want to put out that disclaimer that it wasn't intended to be like a pro either way, but it's good to hear that the electronic stuff has worked for our panelists. And I'll just kind of share from my point of view, although I didn't do the electronic, it wasn't really an option when I was going up for my promotions. I did get to review electronic last year, and as a reviewer, I would say I actually kind of liked it. There were some pros on that side too. You know, there is flexibility in terms of when you can go and view the document. So you could do it like late at night after my kids are in bed, then I can go, and if I don't finish it, I can go back the next day, you know, and clicking on links, you know, just on the hyperlinks, it was just easier than having to go between binders and, you know, and just looking through it. But just hearing what you folks are sharing today, the whole idea with the pagination itself, you know, I never mapped pagination. So that alone and just being able to link, I think it's pretty good points. Michael, you had a list of 10 items that you wanted to share with everybody. If you'd like to go ahead and do that now.
I mean, it's very much similar to what's come out. I actually did have a item in my pros section. It was the 11th item, so I had to take it off. But it had the words "no cons." You know, I just couldn't find any cons. But you do need to do stuff, right? So you will need to attend a training, or, you know, get some kind of training, especially if you're not familiar with all of the, you know, whether that's the technical aspects of the process or the technical aspects of the Google Docs. You will have to find all of your documents and materials, but that's not any different. You're going to have to convert some materials to electronic files. I don't, that will depend on your sort of professionalism or your how you look at professionalism, I will do screenshots and photographs from my camera because I feel like my work speaks for itself, not the quality necessarily of the photograph that I provide, but you will have to do some of that. You will have to upload materials, which takes time. You will have to organize and name materials, which takes time. You will have to organize, or I mean, I would imagine you're going to be organizing your outline or template, but I think maybe that might even be pre-organized for you. So that's really helpful. You know, it'll take a little bit of time to embed working links in your document. It'll take time to share your document and solicit feedback and then edit your document based on that feedback that you receive. But a lot of those things would be similar to the other process. So that was it. 10 simple steps.
We love your list, Michael. Brett, did you have something else to share about appendices or the listing of things?
No, I didn't have anything specific to share, but I did, once that came up, I did, you know, do that. So I can just share on that. So for myself, you know, with the online process, there were several ways you could approach it, right? They give you a template with some, you know, categories there, or you could, in the case of last year, you could do it in a Google Doc yourself. And even within that, there's different ways to present your dossier, right? So the format that I had presented mine in is I had 3 sections. The first section was a brief introduction to the interface, explaining to people how they can navigate the external links, the internal links, because in a Google Doc, it's like a 2-step process. You got to first click on the link and then click on the link to go somewhere. Then I had the dossier or the, you know, narrative, and then I had a 3rd section, which was my supporting resources. And for that, I did make like a directory page. So my thing for my approach was I had dumped everything into one folder. As I was looking through my supporting docs, I just dumped it all into one folder as I was scouring my emails and Google Drive and all my other places that I had stuff. Because I wanted to see it all in one place, I found that easier than trying to put them into 4 or 5 different folders. So I did have one folder with everything in there. But then to organize all of that, you know, I did have categories for things like professional development, leadership, you know, all the traditional categories. For those, I assigned them letters. So like A was like leadership, A was primary duties, B was leadership, C was professional development. Then I went through all my resources and I would rename the file to start with the letter of where I thought it belonged. And what that did really nicely was in Google Docs, it organizes by alphabet. So then I ended up with a group of all my A, which in that case was primary duties, and then B, which was leadership, you know, and so all my file names were structured that way, and it made organizing them really easy. Again, I felt personally having it all in one folder allowed me to scan through it all, see what I had, what my strengths were, what I still needed supporting docs for, that kind of thing. And because the end user or the reviewer is not going to see the file names, I wasn't really concerned that the file name started with an A, a B, a C, or a D. So I did it that way. It organized my stuff nicely. And then from there, I did make a directory page, a single page in Google Docs with all my resources. And that one you can name appropriately because they will see that. You know, you just put a link to the resource. So you name that nicely and consistently. So at that point, I would rename things. Like if I had a thank you letter for the welcome committee for like 5 years in a row, I could use the same naming convention and just change the year, you know, and have a nice list of links.
Thank you for
and
your
if anybody
service.
and if anybody wants to see that, you know, I have a screenshot of that that I can show. But that was my approach to. I never thought about not having a. I guess I was more traditional, right? I had my narrative, and then I had my list of appendixes supporting things. I never thought of not having that.
So how do you feel now, Brent, knowing that you didn't have to do all of that? No, I'm joking.
Well, but you know, I felt it worked well for me. So I don't regret doing it. But if, you know, giving guidance to someone who's going to do it, maybe, like I also didn't receive any comments in my review about, oh, nice directories for resources, right? So maybe you don't have to do it. But I found value in doing it myself. and I thought my method worked fine too. So, no regrets.
That's great. Thank you, Brent. I just want to, at this time, this kind of ends the formalish presentation part of it. So if you folks have questions, go ahead and start putting it in the chat. I do want to also kind of say another comment as a reviewer of the document, the electronic dossier. I think because it's so new, I think the reviewers, I can only speak for myself too, I was less of a stickler, I think. And I think, I've heard of people, when they look at the traditional dossiers, I mean, people have made comments on like the type of sheet protectors people use and the way they organize. I mean, like just amazingly ridiculous things. But I think with the electronic submission, because it's so new and it's new to our eyes as reviewers too, we focus on the content more. So, if you have the appendix and you have everything listed out, that's great. So it's easy access. But if you don't, and all the links are within your document, maybe that works too. I think what Brent speaks to is do what feels right for you. If you were a reviewer of an electronic document, what would make it the easiest for people to review? So I just want to kind of throw that out there. So if I did get a couple questions privately sent to me, so I'm going to go ahead and just throw this out to people. But again, if you do have questions, go ahead and place it in the chat. So one of the questions came up, if someone's going up for a second contract renewal, can I submit electronically? And from what I understand, it's no. This process is for those going up for a tenure and promotion only. But I'm going to kind of check in. We actually have Sandra Ueno and Leilani Umehira who stopped in with us from the UH System CCHRO office, and they're both amazing. So welcome to them. So I'm just gonna kind of throw it out to them just so that I make sure I give the right information. Is that correct, Sandra or Lei?
That is correct.
Yay.
We are working with our developers because we know that there is interest in making it part of the contract renewal process. And we hope to have something maybe in the next academic year available for contract renewal.
Great, thanks, Sandra. Another question that came in is when are electronic dossiers due? Is this a different timeline? So my understanding is it's always the first Friday in October. So I think this year would make it October 2nd, and it's at 4:30, and that's system-wide. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So how does that work with the electronic for when it's due?
So some of the applicants in the past, because they've been kind of anxious and working on it all summer, they'll push the submit button prior to the deadline. But if you don't, and it's sitting there on 4:30 on that deadline, then it would, and you never push the submit button, it will automatically get processed for you. So what's sitting in there just gets taken. So hopefully you've got your final version done and sitting there, but it's removed from your access as of 4:30.
Okay, but it automatically gets submitted if you forget to click the submit. Wow, that's a really nice feature too. Just great. And then let's see, I have a question that came in. If I sign up to do electronic, can I, by this Friday, because Friday the 17th is a deadline to sign up. If I sign up to do it, can I change my mind at the last minute and do paper instead?
Yes, you can. So we've had that in the past where some people, after they've come through training and have actually played with it, I think like Tina had mentioned that working with Google Docs, some people may find it a little challenging, that they were not ready for it. So they've dropped out of it, and you're welcome to turn in a manual one.
Can it go the opposite way? So like say someone doesn't indicate that they want to do electronic by this Friday, but say in August, they're like, you know what, I think I want to try electronic. They do that, or is it'll just be too late? You have to make your decision by Friday.
We never had that. And because in the past, because we didn't do the Zoom training, we had that requirement of that one mandatory face-to-face training because we wanted to make sure that the applicants all had the proper training. But now because we're going to be doing a number of different Zoom sessions, it might be possible. Yeah, so I mean, if you do change your mind, then let your chancellor's office know, and we'll work with them.
That's great.
Good question.
I think a good tip might be, if you think you might possibly want to do electronic, just sign up by this Friday.
That's a good, yeah.
Yeah, just to get that in. Okay, great. And then this is for the panelists. Another question came in. How long were your documents? I know like at Leeward, depending on what division, like language arts, they write novels. So does counseling. Math and sciences are a little bit more succinct in you know, like in limiting their page limits. How long were the electronic documents that you submitted?
Well, I did write a novel. I just looked at my TOC, my table of contents, and my endeavors document, which is a narrative, was almost 100 pages. And then there were several folders of materials to follow with that. But I think because of the way I linked the narrative, people could jump to whatever they wanted to. They didn't have to read the whole thing. They could read to, you know, I have A through G, teaching philosophy, responses, courses taught. All of those different sections of the narrative are linked within primary duties. And then there's professional development and everything else. So you can kind of, I guess as a verbose English teacher, I could go as long as I wanted to and not feel like I was going to give them this humongous, you know, 10-pound thing that they weren't going to want to read. And so I made sure to link it, you know, in sort of brief sections. And then again, they could go back or jump to the next section, do whatever they wanted. And I think that's definitely one of the pros of using the digital format, is that you can break it down into small chunks so that people can do it, read it however they want to. And then, as you said, Erin, the fact that people don't have to go make an appointment to go to the chancellor's office at 10:30 and they have an hour before the, you know, committee meeting. That's a huge advantage for readers.
Right. Anybody else want to comment on the length of their dossiers, their electronic dossiers?
I don't think I made page numbers. I
Oh.
have no idea. And I had all different narrative docs for each part of it. So I didn't have one long continuous document like Susan. I don't even know how long my document was overall. So, and again, I don't think the reviewer is really going to notice or care. So that part of it kind of not as critical as it used to be.
Point.
I had 88 pages.
Mm.
So, but there are pictures in there too. So.
So I guess it really doesn't matter, like the page length as much. Again, you know, it's about what information that you're getting in there. So, okay, so a couple questions from the chat. And thank you, Tina, for also trying to respond as well. Emily writes, do you think expectations to share are heightened? Like to include more links to teaching videos or linking to everything that you discuss? What do you folks think? Did you feel that pressure?
No, I think the expectations are high no matter what, because it's your promotion or tenure document. So for me, it was just a matter of having all the evidence that I needed to support whatever I was claiming I did or could do, whether that's videos or, you know, graphic novels or links to whatever. I mean, I don't have a lot of multimedia stuff myself. My stuff is pretty text-based. So I think it's more, for me, if I was a reviewer, I would be more concerned with, did you do what you said you did? And can you prove it? That's, so it's what format that proof is in is not as important to me as whether the proof is there. You're not just saying I can do this, but there's no, you know, there's no evidence. But that's me.
I agree. I think the content, whether it is in a paper format or electronic, it's the same thing. It's just a different way of presenting your information, but the weight of that information, that'll remain the same. So expectations will remain the same, I would think. Yeah.
Can I chime in here? This was my question, and unfortunately I can't type it because I've got a toddler here and she's very interested in what I'm doing. But I guess I used to be an attorney, and I think I over evidence and I overshare. And in my past dossiers, that's been a mild complaint. You know, why is your document, 4 binders, 5 binders? So, and I also teach a lot online. So I have a lot of teaching videos. I have a lot of online resources. And I do see a very big distinction between things I could not share in the past on a paper dossier and things I could share now. So for example, teaching videos, activities that I couldn't share before. And those things are all, in my mind, good things to share, but they also open up a level of scrutiny and risk that has not existed before. And for anyone who's made online teaching videos, I think you kind of know what I mean, that it's all very contextual. And if you have someone coming in and viewing that video who doesn't have that context, they might not react in the way that you like. So I do think there is a level of risk there. And that's, I think, what my specific question was about. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emily. I mean, I'll just kind of say that I'll open up to the panelists too. I think you're absolutely right. There is a level of risk with anything that you're sharing about yourself, whether it's that video or whether it's, a manual you made or an initiative that you did. And so I think just picking, maybe you did 20 videos, but maybe you're going to just pick your top 2 and build that context around it before you share the link. Then that might be the way to just highlight, and prioritize, because really that's what it is, right? Your document is of course sharing everything that provides evidence, but it's also highlighting your strongest points that show that yes, you have reached the next level. So I would say, yep, there's a level of risk, but this is a new process too. And I think reviewers might be just wowed by the fact that, like, look, you're trying to do these types of things. And as long as you explain it for the reviewer, have someone outside of your division, outside of your college, outside of the educational arena, read your dossier to say, so that they get the message that you're trying to get across, then I think that could be helpful. Panelists, do you have anything to share with Emily about that?
Well, I think I was just, and again, how I got this idea is I was asked if I could just talk to, someone recommended a friend to me to talk about the electronic dossier process last week. And that's when I approached Erin and said, well, maybe there's other people who are curious, right? And so in that conversation, that person was like, well, I literally just put all this paperwork together, all their documents. He starts with his documents. And then, because I think there's probably a lot of dossiers where you just have a whole bunch of evidence and it's not really referenced to anything. So I think, like Susan was saying, it's really there to just support what you're saying about yourself and how it's effective. It's just, you're a lawyer, you know how that works. But if you're going to just throw things in there for the sake of it being there, then in this electronic format, I think it becomes less of an issue, because if you had a Google Doc or a document as evidence, but you don't reference it anywhere, then it's not going to show up, as opposed to like a big binder with like 1 million pages of all kinds of things in there, half of which maybe you never even mention in your write-up, so you're really just only focusing on what's going to support what you're actually claiming in your document. And I think, like how Erin said, as the reviewer, it allows them to focus more on what you're saying and the content. And all the links that you're providing is just in support of what you've been saying about yourself. So it shouldn't be any more or less than what's necessary to support your claims or provide the evidence of whatever it is that you're talking about.
Thank you, Tina. And then Emily had another question. Can you link to Laulima course pages?
I don't think
Do you know
so.
if you can?
I did not, just because, again, I know that even with I send something out to my students as an announcement, they're going to have to log into Laulima to see that. So I don't think you can. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure about that. Maybe Brent knows better than me, but I didn't.
No, I had the same thought as Tina. I think, because of the fact that you have to log in and you have to add them to your course and you don't know, who's necessarily going to want to see it. So in that situation, I'd probably go with a screenshot of your course or a short video of it rather than try to link to your course page.
That's good.
Just throw one more. Oh,
go, Michael. Thank you.
Throw one more caveat on the risk factor. You know, there's a concern with not providing enough evidence, right? That's always a risk if you don't have enough evidence to meet your next rank. But there's also, inevitably, you're in control of what you put in the dossier. And I definitely caution people that if you do include something, then that is your evidence that you're presenting, and that evidence, it's possible that evidence could be used against you. So definitely filter what evidence you share and consider, you know, how it might be interpreted by someone else, especially things that might be negative. You know, as a reviewer, I have read things that are negative in people's dossiers, and my immediate question is, why would you include that? So, you know, some people are honest, and I appreciate honesty as well, but, you know, just, yeah, weigh the risk, I suppose, have people read it.
Thanks, Mike. Another question is what to do when you want to simply share websites, for example, as proof of a professional development activity. Must they be turned into docs, or can they remain as URLs? My understanding, they can remain as URLs, correct? Is that right, gang?
That's what I did. You know, I just would put a link to the, well, I would sometimes do a screenshot of the particular conference that I went to because they change every year. So for a lot of professional development, it would be a screenshot or an email, you know, a thank you letter, that sort of thing. And I don't think I linked to too many actual websites because they're so dynamic. You don't know what's going to, by the time the reviewer is going to read it, it'll be months after you've linked it. So might be better to do a screenshot.
Great. And then there's a question, what is the level of scrutiny? What are the yes numbers on electronic dossiers versus paper? Sandra, do you folks even have that kind of information?
It's the same. The percentage is the same. And, you know, because we were doing surveys at the end of previous years, we're finding that for the ones that are getting denied, it's not because of the electronic format, and it's either because they weren't performing or doing enough for the level that they were applying to, or other factors that didn't have to do with the electronic format. So
thanks, Sandra.
Overall,
Okay,
Sandra, correct me if I'm wrong. Overall, the community colleges have quite a high pass rate overall, right?
We do, but I mean, there are some denials. Yeah.
let's see. There's a question from Michael Oishi. Is there an expectation for each page of supporting documents, for example, course evaluations, to be paginated? I don't think that's as important, right? To paginate. What do you folks think? Those of you who went through the process. He's asking, should we use Acrobat DC to paginate PDFs? Was that a issue?
Paginate anything.
Personal preference.
It never came up. Yeah.
So I paginated my narrative only because if people wanted to reference it, I wanted them to have a page number for that. And then in my supporting things, I did the traditional like C.1, C.2, so I could reference the resource that I was referring to.
Very good. Good. And then this is a good question. How do we inform the chancellor if we want to submit an electronic dossier? Evelyn, I think you just let Lonnie know, the secretary. At the other campuses, I'm not sure, but I would think that maybe you just get in touch with your chancellor's secretary and just let them know that that's what you want to do.
Either one is fine. Carlos said he was happy to receive.
To get the email too?
Yeah.
Maybe email both your chancellor and your chancellor's secretary, just to be safe. Douglas asked, can you link to a folder? For example, you have 5 welcome letters and the welcome committee letters. Instead of linking to each letter, the folder that contains all 5. I would think that's okay. Is that okay, Brent? Is that what you did?
I I didn't do that exact same thing, but I did something similar in that in my narrative, my write-up, I would just refer to section A or section B on my list, and that was it. I didn't direct to the specific file. The thought behind that was if I was referencing leadership, they would go to the leadership section and then it would say B2 and they could just look down that list for B2 and click on it.
Yeah.
That saved me from having to like update links and things, because that was a fear of mine in submitting online, was whether the links would work. And that was my biggest fear, is updating, keeping those up to date.
That's a good point. And I agree. Tina had responded in the chat too that you could, and that's what I was going to say, combine all the letters, scan them all, put them in one file, and then link to that. And so again, I think the bottom line is put yourself in the place of a reviewer. What would make it the easiest, cleanest, most concise, yet most evidence to make your case for your promotion or your tenure. And if you can, and you would have done that anyway in your paper document. So if you decide to do electronic, what's going to make it just clean and easy and concise for them to be able to review your document. So
you're absolutely right, Erin. I did know of someone who did an electronic review of a dossier in my division, and I would always run into that person's office and just say, if you're reviewing this, would you like to see it this way or that way? And she'd say, oh, more like this, you know? So I did take that into consideration. And yeah, like I say, you just want to be mindful of whoever's going to look at this.
And again, just even whether it's paper or electronic, I always say have someone who's totally not in the UHCC system or in education read through your document, and they'll let you know if you have too many acronyms, if things are confusing, if they can't find things. From a layperson's perspective, they'll let you know what makes it easiest to read. Because remember, it's not just people in your discipline or on your campus that are looking at your documents. These are people who will have no idea what your discipline is or where your point of view and where you're coming from. So any last pieces of advice from our presenters? Any last thoughts? We'll start with you, Brent.
Overall, there's no right or wrong, like you said. There's no right or wrong. You know, there's no set way that everyone needs to do it electronically. If you find a system that works for you and you think it's reader friendly, then go for it. But you know, I think just like the paper format, you can see a million different varieties of, you know, how that could look. So it's just a matter of whether you personally feel comfortable with moving forward in that type of platform.
That's great. Brent, Susan, Mike, any last words for our group?
I think it's just what Tina said and what we've all said. If you have to do it in a way that works for you, and if working in Google Docs or Google Drive is not your forte, actually, I would encourage you to give it a shot anyway. I learned a lot through the process, and I would say that I'm not sure it took me any less time. I think it took me almost as much time as it would have taken me to do the paper document, but it was less crazy making because of the lack of pagination. So I felt more in control, and also because I could do it whenever I was ready to do it. I didn't have to go to Kinko's or to the office or anywhere. I could just do it at home once I got everything scanned.
Is that even a thing, Kinko's, Susan?
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant FedEx. Sorry. Oh, I'm dating myself again. Thanks, Michael.
I just want to say I wish everybody good luck. I'm also going to be in the mix this time around. So if you ever if you have any questions or anything like that, or need a reader or anything, I'm happy to help out.
Brent, any last words?
No, I think we've covered some good ground here, and yep, it's not required. If you have to do the paper, it's fine too. But there are benefits to doing the online. And last year, I really appreciated Sandra and her team, the IT guys who are helping out too, and hopefully they'll continue to be available to this year's group as well. But it was a smooth process, and good luck to everybody.
I would reiterate that, yeah, Sandra and Leilani and their team, they're amazing at the system level, super supportive. If you decide to do this, their trainings will really help to clarify a lot of things as well. So with that said, we're coming to the end of this session. I did throw in, again, my email into the chat. So if you are interested in getting a copy of this recording, or if you have any questions, I will also put in the presenters' emails if you folks are okay with that. In the email, if you folks want a copy of the video, so that if you have questions, you can always reach out to them. Want to thank all our presenters today, Michael, Brent, Tina, Susan, and of course, Sandra and Leilani for being here today. And we wish you all the best of luck in your tenure and promotion documents this upcoming fall. Take care, everybody. Be safe. Ahui ho. Aloha.